Ginny's, where East meets West, and a slice of Eastern philosophy becomes a part of Western thinking. I'm your host, Ginny Gong. My first guest is an experienced bridge builder. His pioneering work in integrating marketing and community relations has earned him honors and recognition. In 2008, he received the Presidential Volunteer Service Award, and in 2010, at the conclusion of his work as Chief of Staff at the U.S. Mint, he was awarded the Citation Medal for Exemplary Service. Join me in welcoming the Vice President of Multicultural Markets and Engagement at AARP, David Kim. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Ginny. Thank you for having me.
I think back 20 years ago when you and I first met. At that time, you were with Anheuser-Busch. Yes. I believe that was probably your first corporate career job. What are your memories of being in the corporate sector?
Well, there's quite a few. It spans about a 15-year tenure with them, and I always have kidded folks that I did my MBA there, and they said, "Oh, Masters of Business Administration." I said, "No, Masters of Beer Administration." It was a real privilege to work for the world's largest beer company at that time. And it was truly a marketing juggernaut. As many people are so familiar with the iconic nature of Anheuser-Busch, the American beer company, the Clydesdales, the advertisements, everything from Frank and Louie the Lizards to the Frogs. It's really a part of American life. And so for me, it was really an exciting time to be involved and learn marketing from an American company like Anheuser-Busch.
But you're always interested in creating like signature programs. I know that's sort of your thing. You didn't really want to do just the normal everyday sponsorship. You wanted to create signature programs. How does one go about doing that in corporate America?
Well, I learned very quickly that marketing comes in many forms. There's certainly product marketing, and Anheuser-Busch had quite a portfolio of different brands, from Michelob to Budweiser, Bud Light, you name it. And so each one of those brands really had a certain sort of brand identity to it. I was fortunate enough that I looked in the Asian community and realized that what were some of the passions of the Asian community? Well, certainly food is one of them. Sports is another. Entertainment. And it allowed me to really have a chance to work with chefs such as Ming Tsai, Roy Yamaguchi, Sam Choi. It allowed me to work with several of the LPGA players of Korean and Asian descent, and last but certainly not least, in the area of entertainment, groups such as Hiroshima, who has been around for quite some time.
Right. Then from there, from the corporate sector, you went and you became Chief of Staff for the U.S. Mint. What was that like to, I always think money.
Well, it was a great experience. Obviously, it's an honor to be asked to serve one's country, and so I really felt privileged. The incoming director, Ed Moy, is a good friend, and actually called me up and asked me if I'd be willing to work with him. And my first reply was, "Geez, Ed, you're asking me to give up a job at the world's largest beer company for a government job? You must be crazy."
Right.
But we talked more, and I thought this was a great opportunity, not the least of which to get back to the East Coast. I've been in St. Louis for 15 years, and my family is all from the East Coast, and so I wanted to be closer to home. The job of Chief of Staff really was a new experience for me because not only was I reporting directly to the director and was his right-hand man, if you will, but coming into a government agency was also a very new experience. But all in all, it was fabulous. It was wonderful. I had a chance. Many people don't realize that the Mint is the oldest federal agency.
Yeah, I
1792.
didn't know that until I read, your bio.
And then also it's the world's largest mint. At the peak, we were producing 18 billion coins a year, 9 billion of which are pennies. Wow. So for all those pennies on the ground that nobody wants to pick up, we have to make more to replace those.
Wow.
So it was really fascinating. The Mint is also one of very few agencies that actually makes something. And it's also, again, as the theme, I guess, in my life, is a very iconic American institution. So it was a real treat. I learned a lot, and I'm forever grateful that I had a chance to serve our country.
And you also served the community by being on a number of boards. So, you went from corporate to the public sector, and you do a lot of volunteer work in the community. Tell us about that effort on your part.
One of the things that I learned very quickly working at Anheuser-Busch was when we did outreach to the community, there are so many folks that really came together with great ideas on how to help the community. And so in my role as a corporate representative, this was a great opportunity to really have a win-win situation and really support and help the community, because a stronger community, a better community makes for better customers, more contribution to society. It was a very great opportunity to learn quite a bit about the community, and certainly the diversity of the community is something that was also fascinating to understand that unfortunately most of America still believes that Asian is an ethnicity, and far be it from that. It is a collection of several different ethnicities, and yet the experiences are fascinating. And quite frankly, as you mentioned earlier in the show, I do see myself as a bridge builder between my father's generation. He and my mother immigrated from Korea, and my son's generation. And so helping the community is, I don't want to say self-serving, but I would like to see for my son, his generation, being able to have access to a lot more opportunities that I build upon, given the opportunities that I've been given from my parents when they came over here.
So do you feel as though he has a sense of that? Do you think that you're meeting with any success?
Believe it or not, yes. I mean, one of the things I look back was the fact that he met Norm Mineta at the age of 4 at a baseball game, of all places. This was something that I could have never fathomed in my lifetime. But later on, as he continues to grow and understands who Norm Mineta is, that is something that's truly special. And so, to your point, I do think that the younger generation are getting more opportunities to really meet with the people that they may have only read about. And that's really important for the next generations.
Well, then it seems like a natural that you would go from all of this community work to now with AARP, the organization that will not let us hide after we turn the big 5-0. And with AARP, you are responsible for outreach.
Yes.
What's the mission of AARP, and what's your role in this?
Absolutely. First of all, my parents really are pleased that I have an age-appropriate job now. I think they worried when I was working for a beer company. They were able to brag to their friends that when I worked at the Mint, their son finally got a job where he made a lot of money.
What did they tell people when you were working at Anheuser-Busch?
They just said, if you want free beer. So I think I've kind of evolved now to another stage of life, and I think this is fascinating for me because AARP is a nonpartisan, nonprofit association that really has been created to help people gain a sense of independence, choice, and control to be able to have to better their lives, to ever have a better chance for better lives at their 50 plus. It's also an organization that really advocates on behalf of the 50 plus, and there are 37 million members. So it's very significant.
37 million members.
Yes, that's quite a few. That's quite a few. But as you know, in this day and age, there are a lot of issues, whether it's the Affordable Care Act, whether it's Social Security, whether it's Medicare, whether it's issues that are affecting the older population like isolation. These are all things that AARP is deeply involved in. It's part of what our members want. It's part of what our members look to us for help. What I do is recently, and the AARP has felt, wow, given the latest census, the world as it is today, 54 years ago when AARP was started, is very, very different.
Sure.
It is now a combination of multicultural populations, and part of that includes the growing Asian population. And so my job was specially created for me to really start the Asian Outreach and Marketing Program.
So you talked about members. Who are the members of this organization?
Well, we did a quick analysis before coming over here, and believe it or not, it should come as no surprise actually that people are retiring later.
Yes.
And people are living longer.
Is there ever a consideration to not make it 50, maybe 60, since people are living longer?
Well, I tell you, that's fascinating because when I look at the profile of our current membership base, half are still working. 2/3 are baby boomers. 1/3 are between the ages of 50 and 59.
Okay.
So even though there's this perception that AARP is only for folks that are 70 or 80, that's not true at all. And one
Are
of the
more people joining at a younger point in their lives, like more towards the 50, or do you know?
That's our big challenge. That's our big challenge. And in fact, my mission, my job is to increase the awareness, the relevance, the engagement, and the membership of the 50 plus in the Asian communities to AARP.
Well, you certainly are. It seems like you're on the road. You've created a lot of initiatives, you know. What right now are you working on to do that?
Well, certainly one of the key things in terms of raising awareness is being able to develop a network of community partnerships. We do know that the Asian baby boomers, and there are about 3.5 million of them, comprise the majority of membership for a lot of community-based organizations. We also know that in the Asian community, word of mouth, peer-to-peer, and trusted source are very key dynamics. By establishing these partnerships with key community organizations, we have a third-party validation of who AARP is. We are able to gain access to the community and therefore talk about our mission, explain what we can do for the 50 plus, and that we really are interested, genuinely interested and committed to including Asians into the AARP family.
Well, David, we've run out of time. I want to wish you well. I know you're on a roll and you're doing great things. I already see differences. So thank you very much for all that you do. It's time for us to take a break, and we'll be right back with my next guest. Stay tuned.
To be a mentor, you don't have to have all the answers.
Interesting. You hungry?
Yeah.
You just have to be yourself, which, by the way, is pretty good. Do good. Mentor a child. Call 1-877-BE-A-MENTOR.
While walking in a toy store the day before today, I overheard a crayon box with many things to say.
I don't like red, said Yellow, and Green said, nor do I. And no one here likes orange, but no one knows just why.
Well, I bought that box of crayons and took it home with me and drew with all the colors so the crayons could all see.
That each of us is special and everyone's unique, but it's when we get together that the picture is complete.
Welcome back to Ginny's, where East meets West. Coming out of the closet is difficult enough, but being Asian Pacific American and gay is truly overwhelming for most. The Asian Pacific American community's taboos surrounding homosexuality leave gays in the community feeling alone and alienated from families. But my next guest is the exception. She is a staunch advocate of gay rights for her son, his partner, and countless others. Please join me in welcoming the author of Journey Across the Four Seas and Nightfall in Mogadishu, Veronica Li. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you. Thanks
I want to thank you for your willingness to discuss this, rather sensitive issue with us. Truly appreciate it, to help shed some light on, what it's like to have to be addressing something like this. So let's start by talking a little bit about your family, okay? Who's in this family?
I have one son, and let me describe him a little bit. He is now in his 30s, But when he was a child, he was a very sweet and sensitive child, and he loved to sing. And he never played rough like other boys. He was very gentle, and he had a pretty face. So most people mistook him for a girl. And let me tell you one funny story. I took him to China when he was about 9 years old, and we were climbing the Great Wall. He ran ahead of me, and then I saw a group of Chinese women surround him, and they said something to him and burst out laughing. So I said, I better go and see what's going on. So I ran up, and the women told me, they asked him whether he was a boy or a girl, and his answer was, I don't know.
At 9 years old, my goodness.
Because before the trip, I had taught him to say a few words in Chinese. And one of them was, 不知道.
Oh,
I don't know.
Oh, that is funny.
That was when he used that. He said, I don't know because I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, let me just follow up with your comment. You know, the fact that he was not rambunctious and quiet, that is not an indication of anything, because there are many young children in our community that are quiet and not rambunctious. But when you think back, were there signs that, you know, of something he did or didn't do that would make you think about this?
A mother doesn't think of a child in those terms.
Yeah.
So when he did come out, he was 23 years old. I was devastated.
Who did he come out to?
He didn't really come out to anyone.
Oh,
I outed him.
Oh, you outed him? Okay.
Yeah, he had just come home after a year of teaching music in a school in Europe. He was about 23. And so he came home, and he was living with me for a few months before he found his own place.
Right.
And that was when I suspected that he was hiding something from me. And I did something very sneaky.
Oh, you're willing to admit it?
I peeked into his diary.
Oh, goodness.
Well, he had it lying on the dining table.
Well, of course you had to look at it.
What is a mother supposed to do? So I peeked at it, and I saw what he wrote. And I confronted him with it and asked him whether he was gay. And he said, yes, he was gay. So, you know, it was a shock to me because I never thought of him in those terms, because when he was younger, he was dating girls. He had girlfriends.
Right.
So I called my sister, who is a psychologist, and I was crying, and I broke the news to her. And her reply was, you mean you didn't know? To her, the signs were obvious.
Right. But like you said, as a mother, maybe we don't look at that.
We don't
no matter
look
how
at it
obvious.
in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And no one ever said anything to you?
No.
Your sister never said?
No, nobody said. She thought I knew all along.
Oh, wow.
I never even thought about it.
Wow.
Anyway, so I agonized over it for about a year. But then I was beginning to see changes in my son. You know, he was kind of closed up. I think of him as like a bud that refused to open. But when he came out of the closet, he blossomed. Mm-hmm. He became happy, and he was...
You could see this?
Oh, I could see it. It was so obvious. And eventually he settled down with a very nice young man who is now a pediatrician. And my son is a high school music teacher, and they are very happy together.
And how was this, I mean, you know, you were so surprised. How was this received by the rest of the family? Did everybody know but you?
I don't know. My sister may be a psychologist and particularly sensitive to it. But the funniest thing is that, okay, so the whole family knew. I told the whole family. Except my parents. They were, you know, in their 80s, and I thought people like that were a bit too rigid to accept new ideas, and they were very conservative Chinese. And so whenever my son came to visit, I would, with his partner, I would introduce him as my son's roommate.
Right, right.
But, you know, people may be old, but they're not stupid. So my mother, one time on one visit, she pulled aside my son, and she said to him, it doesn't matter who you love, man or woman. As long as you love each other and you're happy together, that's all that matters.
Wow.
And this is coming from a very conservative 80-some-year-old Chinese woman.
That's really
This is
amazing.
heartwarming. Yeah.
Very heartwarming. Yeah. So now, many years later, you think back at your reaction then. What do you think about?
I don't think of it as an issue anymore. I talk to everybody about it. When my son comes, I show him around to my neighbors, and I talk to all my friends that my son is gay and this is what he's doing.
Do you feel as though sometimes your friends will shy away from being with you because of that at all?
No.
No impact on that?
Because they know me, they know I'm a decent person, and they meet these people. These are people in flesh and blood, and they are decent. And they understand that gays and lesbians, heterosexuals, homosexuals, we are all people. And we all want the same things in life, which is to live a fulfilling life and also enjoy the protection of the law.
In fact, let's talk a little bit about, that we all want the same things in life. They have a daughter.
Yes.
And I watch you beam with pride when you're showing me pictures of this little girl. What does it mean to be a grandmother?
Oh, it is wonderful. It is even more wonderful
than being better than being a mother, right?
Yes. Well, we went to the hospital to pick up this baby. And at first...
And so the baby's adopted?
Adopted, yes, domestically. And at first I wasn't sure how I would feel about it. But the moment I got to the hospital, I saw her and held her in my arms. I say, she is mine. She is my baby.
As a newborn? Was she a newborn?
She was a newborn.
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you a bit about the adoption process. My son and his partner, actually they are married. They got married in Canada. And they applied to this agency for adoption. And what they had to do was to write a profile of themselves. They had to sell themselves as adoptive parents. And the birth mother looks at all these files, and she chooses the people who she wants to be the parents to her child. And at first I thought, oh, they're a gay couple, who is going to pick them? But no, within 2 months of their submission, one woman picked them to be parents, but the fit was not very good, so they rejected that offer. And then a month later, another woman picked them to be parents.
That is amazing that people would actually, because I, would have the same thinking that you, did about it's a selection process. But that's amazing. Now, I know that you're a big advocate for gay rights for your son and for the marriage. Tell us, what are you doing to promote this or to make sure that their rights are protected?
Well, when I heard that same-sex marriage is going to be on the ballot in Maryland, I felt like I have to do something about it. So I wrote an article about my gay son, telling his story, and it's been published in Chinese and English newspapers in the area. I just feel that I want people to know that these are regular people with the same aspirations as everybody else, and I want them to have the same protection of the law and equal treatment under the law as everybody else.
What does the law state now?
Let's talk about the federal government. Mm-hmm. The federal government law affects everybody, and it does not recognize same-sex marriage. It gives a lot of benefits to the traditional marriage, because I guess we want to encourage people to be married, to stay married, and have a good, stable relationship and family. However, these benefits don't apply to same-sex couples. For example, my son and his spouse, they are married, cannot file joint tax return.
Right.
Which means they are missing out on a lot of deductions and credits.
So I'm going to try to move us here. So you just quickly told me about federal law. Very quickly, what does the state law say?
The state law is different. Every state is different depending on the state. But anyway, just to finish up, since they cannot file joint tax return, they're missing out. They are paying thousands of dollars more in taxes every year. The states, every state is different. Some states are more conservative than others. But I think the state is the path to equal treatment. There are now 6 states that legalize same-sex marriage. But if more and more states recognize same-sex marriage, then there would be a groundswell to push the federal government to do something about its law, to push the federal government to recognize same-sex marriage. And that would make a huge difference.
We've run out of time, but really, Veronica, thank you so much. Good luck to your son and his family, and he ought to be really proud of what you're doing to support him. Just know that there are some parents out there that may be, experiencing some of the things that you experience, so I think sharing your story would be very helpful. Thank you. That concludes our program for today. Thanks to David Kim and Veronica Li for joining me, and thanks to all of you for being with us. Stay well, and we'll see you next time.